Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we're here, Shyam Kishore and I, Shyam Kishore Das Brahmachari and I, are here feeling separation from our dear Abhay Das Brahmachari, who is now in Serbia, in Belgrade, and he had a smooth flight, and I just texted him just to find out to make sure that we're in the right spot, because he's very steady and keeps track of everything. Hare Krishna, he may be listening just now, so if he is, may Krishna protect you and bring you back very soon, safe and sound. The people he's staying with are supposedly very nice, so Krishna looks after his devotees. Krishna looks after his devotees no matter where they are and what they're doing. That's a fact. Okay. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was extremely attached to Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, as was his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the father of the Hare Krishna movement. Actually, Prabhupada gave him that credit. And our own dear Srila Prabhupada. But he had this very special way of saying things. And he said this poetic glorification of the Caitanya-caritämrta, which we relish hearing every day. We never get tired of it. It's so nice. He said, in due course, Mahapralaya, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or, if you cannot hold all three, you're trying to swim, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. For if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage, because after it has subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastra. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advantara Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advantara Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advantara Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Okay, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Is the microphone connected? Someone said it seems microphone is not connected well.
The microphone is connected, but it's not connected to the phone. And they missed the whole thing. Well, they heard something. It's way loud, but I think they heard the whole thing. It's Shyam Kishore's first night on the job, and he forgot to plug in the microphones, and I forgot to remind him. And Abhaya's in Serbia, probably scratching his head, wonder what's going on. How can you two do this without me? We can't. Come back soon. Okay, so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his most intimate followers, including Lord Nityananda, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and so on, has come to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the plan to talk to him about how nice a devotee Maharaj Prataparudra is. And they come into the room in front of him, and he said, so, you all came to me, you must be having something to say, but they couldn't speak. And that's where we're reading from. Text 23, Madhya-lila, chapter 12, Sri Caitanya, Caritamrita. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I can understand that you all desire to take me to Cuttack to see the king. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is naturally the reservoir of all kindness, and as soon as he heard the statement made by the king, his heart immediately softened. Thus the Lord was ready to go see the king even at Cuttack. He did not even consider allowing the king to come from Cuttack to Jagannath Puri to see him. It is significant that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so kind that he was ready to go see the king at Cuttack. Apparently, it was never expected that the king wanted to see the Lord at his place, but by way of being externally harsh, the Lord indicated that if all the devotees so desired, he would go to Cuttack to see the king. 24. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "What to speak of spiritual advancement? All the people will blaspheme me. And what to speak of all the people, Damodar would chastise me. I shall not meet the king at the request of all the devotees, but I shall do so if Damodar will give his permission." Purport. From the spiritual point of view, a sannyasi is strictly forbidden to see materialistic people, especially a king who is always engaged in counting pounds, shillings, and pence. Indeed, the meeting between a sannyasi and a king is always considered abominable. A sannyasi is always subjected to public criticism, and a small fault in his part is taken seriously by the public. People actually expect a sannyasi to preach and not take part in any social or political matters. If a sannyasi is subject to public criticism, his preaching will not be fruitful. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically wanted to avoid such criticism so that his preaching work would not be hampered. It so happened that while the Lord was talking to his disciples at that time, the devotee Damodar Pandit was present. This Damodar Pandit was a very faithful devotee and a staunch lover of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Whenever there was anything that might touch or taint the character of the Lord, Damodar Pandit would immediately point it out, not even considering the exalted position of the Lord. It is sometimes said that fools rush in where angels dare not. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to point out Damodar Pandit's foolishness in coming forward to criticize the Lord. This is why the Lord stated that if Damodar Pandit would give him permission, he would go to see the king. There was deep meaning in this statement, for it is a warning that Damodar should not dare criticize the Lord anymore, for it was not befitting his position as a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was considered the guide and spiritual master of all the devotees living with him. Damodar Pandit was one of them, and the Lord rendered Damodar Pandit a special favor by warning him to avoid criticizing him any further. A devotee or a disciple should never attempt to criticize the Lord or his representative, the spiritual master. Text 26. Damodar immediately replied, "My Lord, you are the fully independent, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since everything is known to you, you know what is permissible and what is not permissible." Text 27. "I am merely an insignificant jiva, so what power do I have to give directions to you? By your own personal choice, you will meet with the king. I shall see it." Text 28. "The king is very much attached to you, and you are feeling affection and love toward him. Thus I can understand that by virtue of the king's affection for you, you will touch him. Text 29. Although you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are completely independent, still you are dependent on the love and affection of your devotees. That is your nature. Text 30. Nityananda Prabhu then said, who is there in the three worlds who can ask you to see the king? Still, isn't it the nature of an attached man to give up his life if he does not attain his desired object? For instance, some of the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices gave up their lives in the presence of their husbands for the sake of Krishna. Purport. This refers to the day Lord Sri Krishna and his cowherd boys and flocks of animals were present in the pasturing grounds near Mathura. At that time, the cowherd boys, being a little hungry, requested food, and Lord Krishna asked them to go to the Brahmanas who were engaged nearby in performing yajna, or sacrifice, and to get some food from that yajna. Being so ordered by the Lord, all the cowherd boys went to the Brahmanas and asked them for food, but they were denied. After this, the cowherd boys begged food from the wives of the Brahmanas. All these wives were very much devoted to Lord Krishna in spontaneous love. And as soon as they heard the request of the cowherd boys and understood that Krishna wanted some food, they immediately left the place of sacrifice. They were very much chastised for this by their husbands, and they were ready to give up their lives. It is the nature of a pure devotee to sacrifice his life for the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Text 33. Nityananda Prabhu then submitted one suggestion for the Lord's consideration. There is a way, he suggested, by which you need not meet the king, but which would enable the king to continue living. If you, out of your mercy, send one of your outer garments to the king would live hoping to see you sometime in the future. Purport. Sri Nityananda Prabhu was thus very tactfully suggesting that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu give a piece of his old clothing to the king. Even though the king was not to meet the Lord, the king would then be pacified by receiving such a cloth. The king was very anxious to see the Lord, yet it was not possible for the Lord to see him. Just to resolve the situation, Nityananda Prabhu suggested that the Lord send an old piece of clothing. Thus the king would understand that the Lord was showing mercy to him. The king would then not do anything drastic like giving up his life or becoming a mendicant. Text 35. The Lord said, since you are all very learned personalities, whatever you decide, I shall accept. Lord Nityananda Prabhu then obtained an external garment used by the Lord by requesting it from Govinda. Thus, Nityananda Prabhu delivered the old cloth into the care of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sent it to the king. Text 38. When the king received the old cloth, he began to worship it exactly as he would worship the Lord personally. Purport. This is also the conclusion of the Vedic injunctions. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the absolute truth, everything in relation to him is on the same platform. The The king had great affection for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and although he did not see the Lord, he had nonetheless already attained the conclusion of devotional service. Immediately upon receiving the cloth from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the king began to worship it, accepting it as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord's clothing, bedding, slippers, and everything required as an ordinary necessity are all transformations of Shesha, the expansion of Sri Baladev, who serves as Lord Vishnu's bed. Thus the cloth and other paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are but other forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything connected to the Lord is worshipable. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs us that just as Krishna is worshipable, Krishna's place, Vrindavan, is also worshipable. And as Vrindavan is worshipable, similarly, the paraphernalia in Vrindavan, the trees, roads, river, everything is worshipable. A pure devotee thus sings Jaya Jaya Vrindavana Vasi Yatta Jana. All glories to the residents of Vrindavan. If a devotee has a staunch devotional attitude, all these conclusions will be awakened or revealed within the heart. Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yata Devi Tata Garo Tasyaite Katita Yarta Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. Thus, following in the footsteps of Maharaj Prataparudra and other devotees, we should learn to worship everything belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is referred to by Lord Shiva as Tadiyanam. In the Padma Purana, it is said, Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnor Aradhanam Padam Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samacharam. O Devi, the most exalted system of worship is worship of Lord Vishnu. Greater than that is the worship of Tadiya, or anything belonging to Vishnu. Sri Vishnu is Satchidananda Vigraha. Similarly, the most confidential servant of Krishna, the spiritual master, and all devotees of Vishnu are Tadiya. The Satchidananda Vigraha Guru, Vaishnavas, and things used by them must be considered Tadiya, and without a doubt, worshipable by all living beings. I'll repeat this last sentence, it's very important. The Satchidananda Vigraha, Guru, Vaishnavas, and things used by them must be considered Tadiya, without a doubt, worshipable by all living beings. Text 39. After returning from his service in South India, Ramananda Roy requested the king to allow him to remain with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Ramananda Roy requested the king to allow him to stay with the Lord, the king immediately gave him permission with great satisfaction. As for the king himself, he began to solicit Ramananda Roy to make a meeting arrangement. He's determined. Text 41. The king told Ramananda Roy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very merciful to you. Therefore, please solicit my meeting with him without fail. 42. The king and Ramananda Roy returned together to Jagannath Chetra, Puri, and Sri Ramananda Roy met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At that time, Ramananda Roy informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the ecstatic love of the king. Indeed, as soon as there was some opportunity, he repeatedly informed the Lord about the king. His devotees are capturing him. Text 44. Sri Ramananda Roy was indeed a diplomatic minister for the king. His general behavior was very expert, and simply as by describing the king's love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gradually softened the Lord's mind. Purport. A diplomat in the material world knows how to deal with people, especially in political affairs. Some of the great devotees of the Lord, like Ramananda Roy, Raghunath Das Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and Rupa Goswami, were government officers and had a background of very opulent householder life. Consequently, they knew how to deal with people. In many instances, we have seen the diplomacy of Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and Ramananda Roy employed in the service of the Lord. When Raghunath Das Goswami's father and uncle were to be arrested by government officials, Raghunath Das Goswami hid them and personally met the government officers and settled the affair diplomatically. This is but one instance. Similarly, Sanatan Goswami, after resigning his ministership, was thrown in jail, and he bribed the attendant of the jail so he could leave the clutches of the Nawab and live with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now we see Ramananda Roy, a most confidential devotee of the Lord, diplomatically soften the heart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, despite the fact that the Lord definitely decided not to meet the king. The diplomacy of Ramananda Roy and entreaties of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and all the other great devotees succeeded. The conclusion is that diplomacy used for the service of the Lord is a form of devotional service. The conclusion is that diplomacy used for the service of the Lord is a form of devotional service. Text 45. Maharaj Prataparudra, in great anxiety, could not endure not seeing the Lord. Therefore, Sri Ramananda Roy, by his diplomacy, arranged a meeting with the Lord for the king. Sri Ramananda Roy frankly requested Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please show your lotus feet to the king at least once. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, my dear Ramananda, you should make this request after duly considering whether it is befitting for a sannyasi to meet a king. If a mendicant meets a king, this world and the next world are both destroyed for the mendicant. Indeed, what is there to say of the next world? In this world, people will joke if a sannyasi meets a king. Ramananda Roy replied, my Lord, you are the supreme, independent personality. You have nothing to fear from anyone because you are not dependent on anyone. Text 50. When Ramananda Roy addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu objected, saying, I am not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but an ordinary human being in the renounced order of life. Therefore, I must fear public opinion in 3 ways, with my body, mind, and words. Text 51. As soon as the general public finds a little fault in the behavior of a sannyasi, they advertise it like wildfire. A black spot of ink cannot be hidden on a white cloth. It is always very prominent. Ramananda Roy replied, "My dear Lord, you have delivered so many sinful people. This King Prataparudra, the king of Orissa, is actually a servitor of the Lord and your devotee." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "There may be much milk in a big pot, but if it is contaminated by a drop of liquor, it is untouchable." The king certainly possesses all good qualities, but simply by taking up the name king, he has infected everything. Text 55. "But if you are still very eager for the king to meet with me, please first bring his son to meet me." Text 56. "It is indicated in the revealed scriptures that the son represents the father. Therefore the son's meeting with me would be just as good as the king's meeting with me." Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1078:36 it is said, "Atma vai putra utpana iti Veda sushasanam." The Vedas enjoin that one is born as his own son. The son is non-different from the father, and this is admitted in every revealed scripture. In Christian theology, it is believed that Christ, the Son of God, is also God, or in other words, that they are identical. 57. Ramananda Roy then went to inform the king about his talks with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and, following the Lord's orders, brought the king's son to see him. 58. The prince, just entering upon his youth, was very beautiful. He was blackish in complexion and had large lotus eyes. The prince was dressed in yellow cloth, and there were jeweled ornaments decorating his body. Therefore, anyone who saw him would remember Lord Krishna. Seeing the boy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately remembered Krishna. Meeting the boy in ecstatic love, the Lord began to speak. "Here is a great devotee," Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. "Upon seeing him, everyone can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, son of Maharaj Nanda." Purport. In his Anubhashya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that a materialist mistakenly accepts the body and mind as the source of material enjoyment. In other words, a materialist accepts the bodily conception of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not regard the son of Maharaj Prataparudra with the idea that he was a materialist, being the son of a materialist, nor did he consider himself the enjoyer. Mayavadi philosophers make a great mistake by assuming that the Satchidananda Vigraha, the transcendental form of the Lord, is like a material body. However, there is no material contamination in transcendence, nor is there any possibility of imagining a spirituality in matter. One cannot accept matter as spirit. As indicated by the technical words, Bauma Ijjadi, Bhagavatam 1084:13. Materialistic Mayavadis imagine the form of God in matter, although according to their imagination, God is ultimately formless. This is simply mental speculation. Even though Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he placed himself in the position of a gopi. He also accepted the king's son directly as the son of Maharaj Nanda, Brajendra Nandana Hari. This is perfect vision according to the direction of the Vedic culture, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Pandita Samadarshinaha. Such acceptance of the absolute truth, according to Vaishnava philosophy, is explained in both the Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3 and the Katha Upanishad 1.2.23 in the following words: Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo Namedhaya Bahuna Shrutena Yam Evaisha Vinute Tena Labhyas Tasyaisha Atma Vivinute Tanum Swam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, nor even by much hearing. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. The living entity is entangled in material existence due to his lack of such spiritual vision. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung in his Caitanya-caritämrta, Sangsare Asya Prakriti Buddhya Purusha Abhimani Mari. Sangsare Asya Prakriti Buddhya Purusha Abhimani Mari. When the living entity comes to the material world, he thinks himself the enjoyer. Thus he becomes more and more entangled. Text 62. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I have become very much obligated just by seeing this boy. After saying this, the boy again embraced the prince. As soon as the prince was touched by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, symptoms of ecstatic love immediately manifested themselves in his body. These symptoms included perspiration, trembling, tears, being stunned, and jubilation. 64. The boy began to cry and dance, and he chanted, Krishna, Krishna. Upon seeing his bodily symptoms and his chanting and dancing, all the devotees praised him for his great spiritual fortune. At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calmed the youth and ordered him to come there daily to meet him. Text 66. Ramananda Roy and the boy then departed from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramananda took him back to the king's palace. The king was very happy when he heard of his son's activities. Text 67. Just by embracing his son, the king was filled with ecstatic love, just as if he had touched Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. Text 68. From then on, the fortunate prince was one of the most intimate devotees of the Lord. Purport. In this regard, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati writes, Yat karunya kataksha vaibhavatam. If Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu simply glanced at someone for a moment, that person immediately turned into one of the most confidential devotees of the Lord. The prince came to see the Lord for the first time, but by the Lord's mercy, the boy immediately became a topmost devotee. This was not in theory, but in practice. We cannot apply the Nagna Matrika Nyaya formula. This states that if one's mother was naked in her childhood, she should continue to remain naked even though she has become the mother of so many children. If a person is actually blessed by the mercy of the Lord, he can immediately become a topmost devotee of the Lord. The logic of Nagna Matrika states that if a person is not elevated on such and such a date, he cannot become an exalted devotee overnight, as it were. This particular instance offers evidence to contradict that theory. On the previous day, the boy was simply an ordinary prince, and the next day he was counted as one of the topmost devotees of the Lord. This was all made possible by the causeless mercy of the Lord. The Lord is omnipotent, all-powerful, or almighty, and he can act as he likes. Text 69. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Tattva Sandarbha makes the point that if one can actually understand and accept the inconceivable potency of the Lord, then he can become a pure devotee. Then he can understand the Lord. Without accepting the Lord is inconceivable and therefore capable of doing anything, nothing will surprise the devotee or seem out of place or wrong in any way. Text 70. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acted in the society of his pure devotees, performing his pastimes and spreading the Sankirtan movement. Text 70. Some of the prominent devotees, like Advaita Acharya, used to invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take his meals at their homes. The Lord accepted such invitations, accompanied by his devotees. In this way, the Lord passed some days in great jubilation. Then the car festival of Lord Jagannath approached. Text 72. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first of all called for Kashi Mishra, then for the superintendent of the temple, then for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When these three people came before the Lord, he begged them for permission to wash the temple known as Gundica. Purport. The Gundica temple is situated 2 miles northeast of the Jagannath temple. At the time of the Rath Yatra festival, Lord Jagannath goes to the Gundica temple from his original temple and stays there for 1 week. After 1 week, he returns to his original temple. It is understood by hearsay that the wife of Indradyumna, the king who established the Jagannath temple, was known as Gundica. There is also mention of the name of the Gundica temple in authoritative scripture. The area of the Gundica temple is estimated to be 288 cubits by 215 cubits. A cubit is about 1.5 feet. The main temple inside is about 36 cubits by 30 cubits, and the Kirtan hall is 32 cubits by 30 cubits. Text 74. Upon hearing the Lord's request for permission to wash the Gundica temple, the Padicha, the superintendent of the temple, said, "My dear sir, we are all your servants. Whatever you desire is our duty to perform." 75. The king gave a special order for me to do, without delay, whatever your lordship orders. Text 76. My dear Lord, washing the temple is not service befitting you. Nonetheless, if you wish to do so, it is to be accepted as one of your pastimes. 77. To wash the temple you need many water pots and brooms. Therefore order me. I can immediately bring all these things to you. As soon as the superintendent understood the desire of the Lord, he immediately delivered 100 new water pots and 100 brooms for sweeping the temple. Text 79. The next day, early in the morning, the Lord took his personal associates with him and with his own hand smeared sandalwood pulp on their bodies. Text 78. He then gave each devotee a broom with his own hand, and taking all of them personally with him, the Lord went to Gundica. Text 81. In this way, the Lord and his associates went to cleanse the Gundica temple. At first they cleansed the temple with brooms. The Lord cleansed everything inside the temple very nicely, including the ceiling. He then took up the sitting place, Singhasan, cleansed it, and again put it in its original place. 83. Thus the Lord and his companions cleansed and swept all the temple's buildings, big and small, and finally cleansed the area between the temple and the kirtan hall. Indeed, hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleansing all around the temple, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally carrying out the operation just to instruct others. Text 85. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu washed and cleansed the temple in great jubilation, chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna all the time. Similarly, all the devotees were also chanting and at the same time performing their respective duties. 86. The entire beautiful body of the Lord was covered with dust and dirt. In this way it became transcendently beautiful. At times, when cleansing the temple, the Lord shed tears, and in some places he even cleansed with those tears. Imagine. 87. After this, the place where the deity's food was kept, Bhogamandir, was cleansed. Then the yard was cleansed, and then all the residential quarters, one after the other. Text 88. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu collected all the straw, dust, and grains of sand in one place, he gathered it in his cloth and threw it outside. Following the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees, in great jubilation, began to gather straws and dust with their own clothes and throw them outside the temple. Text 90. The Lord then told the devotees, I can tell how much you have labored and how well you have cleansed the temple simply by seeing all the straw and dust you have collected outside. Text 91. Even though all the devotees collected dirt in one pile, the dirt collected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was much greater. Ooh. Text 92. After the inside of the temple was cleansed, the Lord again allotted areas for the devotees to cleanse. Text 93. The Lord then ordered everyone to cleanse the inside of the temple very perfectly by taking finer dust, straws, and grains of sand and throwing them outside. Text 94. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the Vaishnavas cleansed the temple for the second time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see the cleansing work. Text 95. While the temple was being swept, about 100 men stood ready with filled water pots, and they simply awaited the Lord's order to throw the water from them. 96. As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called for water, all the men immediately brought the 100 water pots, which were completely filled, and delivered them before the Lord. 97. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first washed the main temple, and then thoroughly washed the ceiling, the walls, the floor, the sitting place, Singhasan, and everything else within the room. Text 98. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and his devotees began to throw water onto the ceiling. When this water fell, it washed the walls and floors. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to wash the sitting place of Lord Jagannath with his own hands, and all the devotees began to bring water to the Lord. Text 100. All the devotees within the temple began to wash. Each one had a broom in his hand, and in this way they cleansed the temple of the Lord. Text 101. Someone brought water to pour into the hands of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and someone poured water on his lotus feet. The water that fell from the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was drunk by someone who hid himself. Someone else begged for that water, and another person was giving that water in charity. After the room was washed, the water was left out through an outlet, and it then flowed and filled the courtyard outside. The Lord mopped the rooms with his own clothes, and he polished the throne with them also. In this way, all the rooms were cleansed with 100 water pots. After the rooms had been cleansed, the minds of the devotees were as clean as the rooms. When the temple was cleansed, it was purified, cool, and pleasing, just as if the Lord's own pure mind had appeared. 107. Since hundreds of men were engaged in bringing water from the lake, there was no place to stand on the banks. Consequently, someone began to draw water from a well. 108. Hundreds of devotees brought water in the pots, and hundreds took the empty pots away to fill them up again. With the exception of Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, Sarup Damodar, Brahmananda Bharati, and Paramananda Puri, everyone was engaged in filling the water pots and bringing them there. Many of the water pots were broken when people collided with one another, and hundreds of men had to bring new water pots to fill. 111. Some people were filling the pots, and others were washing the rooms, but everyone was engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna and Hari. 112. One person begged for a water pot by chanting the holy names, Krishna, Krishna, and another delivered a pot while chanting, Krishna, Krishna. 113. Whenever anyone had to speak, he did so by uttering the holy name of Krishna. Consequently, the holy name of Krishna became an indication for everyone who wanted something. 114. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was vibrating the holy name of Krishna in ecstatic love, he himself was performing the work. He himself was performing the work of hundreds of men. Hundreds. 115. It appeared as though Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were cleansing and washing with 100 hands. He approached every devotee just to teach him how to work. 116. When he saw someone doing nicely, the Lord praised him. But if he saw that someone was not working to his satisfaction, he immediately chastised him, that person, not bearing him any grudge. This is the effective way to instruct others in a way that they don't feel bad and not in a begrudging mood. Out of love. 117. The Lord would say, "You have done well. Please teach this to others so that they may act in the same way." Text 118. As soon as they heard Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say this, everyone became ashamed. Thus the devotees began to work with great attention. They washed the Jagamohan area, and then the place where food was kept. All other places were also washed. In this way, the meeting place was washed, the entire yard, the raised sitting places, the kitchen, and every other room. Thus, all places around the temple were thoroughly washed within and without. After everything was thoroughly washed, a Vaishnava from Bengal who was very intelligent and simple, came and poured water on the lotus feet of the Lord. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas then took that water and drank it himself. The Gaudiya Vaishnava then took that water and drank it himself. Seeing that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt a little unhappy and was outwardly angry. Although the Lord was certainly satisfied with him, he became angry externally in order to establish the etiquette of religious principles. The Lord then called for Surup Damodar and told him, just see the behavior of your Bengali Vaishnava. This person from Bengal has washed my feet within the temple of the personality of Godhead. Not only that, but he has drunk the water himself. 127. I do not know what my destination is because of this offense. Indeed, your Bengali Vaishnava has greatly implicated me. And I'm going to stop here. 127. Hare Krishna. This next part is especially ecstatic, and I want to hear it all at once. And the purports in which the significance of this process of cleansing the Gundica temple represents the cleansing of our hearts. Prabhupada always reminded us that if we keep our things, everything, our cloth, place we live in, what to speak of the altar, everything, bathroom, if we keep it clean, then our hearts remain clean. And if we let it go, then our hearts get restless and want to go here and there and everywhere. Okay, 127. I'm gonna not forget to write it down now, so I'll know what it is tomorrow. Hare Krishna, everyone, please. We're just waiting for the reflections to flow from your mouth like nectar. Hare Krishna.
So we have some from Nitai Gosai.
Oh, Nitai Gosai. By the way, I got your note and I was very busy today. I didn't have time to respond. But the fact is that I did skip. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say I was in ecstasy, but it was an ecstatic reading for sure. And I skipped one verse, verse 21. So you should know that there's not a difference in the book I was reading and the book you were reading. I missed the verse. Hare Krishna.
Dear Srila Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisance. Are there throughout the year presiding deities at the Gundica temple? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I don't think so, because then they would have to take the deities away. I actually don't know for sure. But I think that it's reserved for Lord Jagannath. But my memory is it's not completely clear on that. I once knew that fact, but I don't remember. I'm getting old and I can't remember everything, especially long-term memory. Radha Madan Mohan said, Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Radha Mohan, Prabhu, Ji.
Rati Manjai said, Jai Guru Maharaj.
Jai Rati.
Brian Phillips
Hare Krishna, Brian.
said, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Haribo.
Saloni said, Hare Krishna Maharaj, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to your divine service.
Hare Krishna. I'm just a peon trying to deliver the mail without opening it and changing it.
Looks like Shyam Kishore has something to say. He wants to point out what turned him on here.
I found it interesting that just before they started to clean the temple, it was mentioned, Prabhupada mentioned that we should learn to worship everything belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that the Satchidananda Vigraha, Guru, Vaishnavas and things used by them must be considered totally and without a doubt worshipable by all living beings.
Yes.
And then it just follows
Yes.
the cleaning of the temple.
Yes.
And
the more we follow that ourselves, the more elevated we become in Krishna consciousness. Because it's not the actual act itself, but it's the pleasure that it gives to the Lord. Tadiyanam samacharan. The Lord is more pleased when He sees the devotees worshipping things connected to the devotees and things connected to the devotees, than when they worship Him and things connected with Him. But that doesn't mean we don't worship Him and things connected with Him also. But everything revolves around pleasing. There's a word, aparad. Aparad means offense in our Vaishnava tradition. But the word in Hindi and in Bengali, aparad means against the law. It's a criminal term. Aparad, against the rule, against the law. So, the real meaning of aparad is to do something that doesn't please the Lord. If you do what you do, no matter what it is, in the right mentality, for the pleasure of the Lord, means especially attentively, especially clean, especially beautiful, everything, then the Lord becomes pleased. This is the secret. We heard that verse tonight. I can never remember the Sanskrit of that verse, but what it means is that you can't please the Lord. I have it. Hand me that little, yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. Good, well done. You went right to it. I could have been saying anything over there. That was great. I wrote this one. This is important enough that I wrote it in my book. Huh? No. It is well, hope I can find it. Yeah. Nayam atma pravachanena labhyo namedasa na bahuna shutena yam evaisha vinute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vivinute tanum swam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, or even by much hearing. He is obtained only by one whom He Himself chooses. To such a person, He manifests His own form. The Gundica Upanishad 3.2.3. Now the reason is because if you do something with the purpose of making it as nice as possible for the pleasure of the Lord, He becomes pleased. And when He becomes pleased, then He naturally favors His devotee. And He chooses the devotee. And as soon as He chooses you, that's it. Even if you haven't done everything perfectly, as soon as He chooses you, that's it. You can attain perfection.
It reminds me, I can't remember the verse number, but I'm sure you will know, where it says how one should think when one has a certain duty. The Prabhupada explains in his Prabhupada, one must think that this duty has been appointed by the Lord, and then in that way there's perfect Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
And I was
Yes.
thinking just...
That's a good example. Good example. One should think this duty has been appointed by the Lord, and I should do it very nicely. Give me the Gita. (1857). I think I remember.
Yes.
Got it? It is right? Well, what do you know? I remembered something. There's hope. Chetasa sarvakarmani mai sanyasya mat paraha buddhi yogam upashritya machtita satatam bhava. In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. Purport. When one acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not act as the master of the world. Just like a servant, one should act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. A servant has no individual independence. He acts only in the order of the Master. A servant acting on behalf of the Supreme Master is unaffected by profit and loss. He simply discharges his duty faithfully in terms of the order of the Lord. He simply discharges his duty. Now, one may argue that Arjuna was acting under the personal direction of Krishna, but when Krishna is not present, how should one act? If one acts according to the direction of Krishna in this book, as well as under the guidance of the representative of Krishna, then the result will be the same. The Sanskrit word matpada is very important in this verse. It indicates that one has no goal in life save and except acting in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. And while working in that way, one should think of Krishna only. I have been appointed to discharge this particular duty by Krishna. While acting in such a way, one naturally has to think of Krishna. This is perfect Krishna consciousness. One should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. That sort of duty is not in the devotional service of Krishna consciousness. One should act according to the order of Krishna. This is a very important point. That order of Krishna comes through disciplic succession from the bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, the spiritual master's order should be taken as the prime duty of life. If one gets a bona fide spiritual master and acts according to his direction, then one's perfection of life in Krishna consciousness is guaranteed. Do that book's distribution every day, and you'll get it. And when you do, you know it. And you don't, all hell breaks loose. Okay, what else? Hare Krishna.
So, this is from Rati Manjari.
Hey Rati, Hare Krishna.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Tonight we heard more about the great... Tonight we heard more about the great desire of the king Prabhupada to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Lord's great reluctance to do so in his role as a sannyasi. There are many points to appreciate about this pastime, but there is something about it which I do not understand. Didn't Sukadev Goswami, who was a renunciate, meet King Parikshit peacefully and speak the whole Srimad Bhagavatam to him in the presence and with the blessings of all the assembled sages? How are we to reconcile these points?
He was not officially a sannyasi. Shukadev Goswami was avaduta. He was outside of the Varnashram system, the social system. He was not a part of society. When he was born, he stayed in his mother's womb for 16 years. And he was completely absorbed in self-realization. He didn't want to come out and risk becoming entangled in the material world. And then his father, Vyasadeva, preached to him, and then he still wouldn't come out. Finally, Vyasadeva went to Krishna and brought him, and Krishna personally came and reassured him, you can come out, and I promise you won't become attached. And he took that, and he came out, and immediately he ran into the forest. Vyasadeva was running after him. Oh, my son, my son. But he was very smart, Vyasadeva. You know, Vyasadeva is the most smart person in the universe, except for Krishna. And he is an incarnation, literary incarnation of Krishna. So he stationed his disciples in different places in the forest. And when they saw him walking around, they would chant these verses of the Bhagavatam. And then he got attracted. And he became convinced to come back, and he heard the whole Bhagavatam. He actually studied the whole Bhagavatam. And he heard it and memorized it. 18,000 verses. So when it came time for Parikshit Maharaj to sit down, all the great sages were there, and they were talking to one another, and he was asking everybody, what am I supposed to do now? And not all of them agreed. But when Shukadev Goswami came on the scene, everyone bowed down. Everyone, except for Vyasadeva, Brahma, and Narada Muni, something like that, Lord Shiva. Only the topmost person. Everyone else just bowed down, because he was beyond the ashram. He was beyond society. They knew just by his physiognomy, and he was not clean. He was just walking around naked. And children and old ladies and children especially would tease him, throw dirt on him and tease him. It didn't bother. He wasn't bothered by anything. So as soon as he came into that arena, all the children and people who were teasing him, they all said, oops, and they ran away. And then everyone bowed down, and they put him on the seat, and Parikshit Maharaj came and paid obeisances. And everyone agreed, he's the one. So this is a deep pastime of the Lord. You cannot compare, Lord Chaitanya's refusing to go see a king to the incident that happened as a pastime of the Lord to deliver the Srimad Bhagavatam to the whole material universe. Hare Krishna.
There's another comment from Rati.
Ah.
If a renunciate is not supposed to meet a king, how are they supposed to become delivered or even become an enlightened leader? In Vedic culture, isn't the whole system based on the administrators being guided by the Brahmanas and renounced sannyasis?
They didn't necessarily have sannyasis. You're mixing, you're conflating things. In your idea, it's not completely correct because you're conflating ideas. They had the kings would have a council of brahmanas. They weren't necessarily sannyasis. The sannyasis were outside of that system. I'm saying the same thing again. The answer is the same thing. The actual sannyasis, especially the Paramahansa sannyasis, they were outside of the social structure. Kings didn't go to the sannyasis, but they had, brahmanas, qualified brahmanas and saintly sages persons, but they weren't necessarily avadutas or sannyasis who were outside the social, the normal social life. There may have been exceptions, but generally speaking, like Chanakya Pandit, he was the prime minister of the king at the time, Chandragupta, and he would have to go out into the forest and see him. But if the king came to see for a personal advice so that he could serve in his capacity as king properly, then sometimes, the sage may allow, just like Lord Chaitanya will give him an audience. But try to understand, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in this part of his life, he was, not always, but almost all the time, he was in some state of external consciousness. In ecstatic consciousness. He wasn't even, when he met the king changed his dress, came to where Lord was resting. He was exhausted from the kirtan. He was in complete ecstasy, not even an external consciousness. And king came and started reciting the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, and the Lord was in ecstasy. He didn't even notice who it was. He just embraced him and he said, "You were great, keep on reading, go on reading, go on reading." These are the pastimes of the Lord.
We have Abhay Prabhu.
Abhay Das Brahmachari is talking from Serbia, Belgrade, in the guest house.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you for this reading.
Well, thank you for being there. Thank you for your ears. And thank you for your constant, unalloyed devotional service. Wait, Shyam Kishore has something to say.
I was just wondering about when you mentioned about one should not hold grudges. About first to praise what is being done properly, and if not, then being chastised, but then not holding grudges. Could you say a bit more on that holding grudges part?
Well, first of all, if the spiritual master chastises the disciple or corrects him, there is no question of grudges. But when a person becomes corrected, he should not hold it against the person. And the person who is giving instruction should not hold it against the person or keep it in his heart that he did something wrong. Of course, if he keeps doing something wrong, he'll keep chastising it. But that's not the same as begrudging. Begrudging means you don't really want to do something, but you do it anyway. That's begrudgingly. You don't really feel like doing it, but you do it. There's some motive, there's some other motive. But when you like to do something, when you want to do something, when a person's serving you because he wants to, it's very pleasing. There's no ulterior motive, there's no bad feelings, no malice, no hesitation, no all those negative feelings. And when the spiritual master or an authority corrects the dependent, sometimes he may act, angry or in a negative way. But then it's very quickly over. There is no begrudgingness. Begrudging means you hold the negative feeling in your heart about something or some person or something, some event. We should learn to let those things go. Or we should even, Prabhupada used to say that the spiritual master keeps the rose and the thunderbolt, and mainly he holds the rose. But when the thunderbolt's needed to correct the disciple, to help It's like the father and the child. Sometimes the father and mother's duty is to, correct the child, train the child, so that he knows how to act in a way that's not dangerous to himself and to others.
I think one of the verse where it said mention about the good qualities with forgiveness. Prabhupada explains
the way to overcome anger is to forgive. This is in the 19th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the teachings of Bhishma, when Bhishma was leaving his body and instructing Maharaj Yudhishthira. In one of those purports, there was a whole list of negative things and then the positive things, that one could do in order to overcome those negativities. And and anger, it says, can be overcome by forgiveness. If one wants to learn how to overcome anger, he should learn how to forgive. And now, I'm going to stop. It's 8:30. Do we have more?
No, just Rati Manjai said, thank you for your elaboration, dear Guru Maharaj. Santa Rup David also, thank you, learned so much again.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the devotees. You got one more thing?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
From Rati Manjai. How should we let go of begrudging feelings which we may be holding in our hearts, or for that matter, other negative feelings? Some of this may be there unconsciously, but they are still holding us back from happily advancing in Krishna consciousness.
It's by practice. It's by practice. By if you hold a grudge against somebody, then you have to do something, serve, do something, glorify that person in public, find the good qualities of that person, give a present, reveal your heart, quiet, confidential. These are the ways of exchanging love, and they're also the ways to overcome negativity and negative feelings. Read this letter, the famous O Utopia letter that Prabhupada wrote to Atreya Rishi, February 4th, 1972, to Atreya Rishi. It's in the database. You can look it up and read it from time to time. If there's particular things that you need to clarify, that you need to relinquish, to give up, just like in the end of the 4th chapter, what does Krishna say at the end of the 4th chapter? Last verse of the 4th chapter. You got it in your mind? I think it's Tasmat Tvam Inriyanyado. No. It is Tasmat Jnana Sambhutam. Yes. Tasmat Ajnana Sambhutam Ritstam Jnanasinatmanaha Chitvainam Sangshayam Yogam Atishto Tishta Bharata. Therefore the doubts which have arisen in your mind, in your heart, out of ignorance, should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharat, stand and fight. So this is the way. You have to fight against Maya. You have to fight against delusion. Stand up. Read these books. Apply the books to your own character, and then you will see for yourself. The doubts will dissipate. And you have to do that for a long time. This is Kapila Dev's instructions to Devahuti. You have to do that for a long time from the proper source, very seriously. Then gradually all these impurities will become cleansed. And with that, Hare Krishna, I'm going. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Brinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same subject matter, same ecstasy. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow. Hari Bol.